Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really zeroing in on some core Buddhist teachings. We're drawing from the content of a recent lecture we looked at.
Right.
And the idea is to unpack these principles, especially the Eightfold Path, just based on the teaching itself, understand the ideas on their own.
Yeah, and what often strikes you first, I think, with Buddhist teaching is how it starts.
Yeah.
It often begins right with suffering, the problem,
Okay.
not with, say, a grand cosmology. It identifies suffering, then asks, where does it come from, and then presents the way out. It's a bit unusual structurally.
It is, yeah, like reading the end of a mystery first, almost. So while Buddhism is vast, this particular teaching, focusing on the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, Bat Chonao, it seems to really hone in on this specific structure.
Definitely.
So for this deep dive, we're setting aside the wider landscape, just for now, and focusing purely on the Eightfold Path as it was laid out in this material.
Sounds good. So the path itself, the 8 parts, let's list them out. We've got right view,
Chan Keen.
right thought, Chan Tudui.
Right speech, Chan Nao.
Right action, Chan Nik. Right livelihood, Chan Man.
Right effort, Chan Tin Tun. Right mindfulness, Chan Im.
And finally, right concentration, Chan Nep.
And the teaching really stressed knowing these like almost as a mantra. Chan Kin, Chan Tudui, Chan Nuk, Chan Nep, Chan Mang, Chan Tin Tun, Chan Nep, Chan Nep.
Exactly. Like a fundamental map you keep coming back to.
What's really interesting, though, is that first one, right view. The teaching made a point that, well, even if you know everything, all the Nikayas, Mahayana Sutras, commentaries, all that vast knowledge,
Yeah.
it still falls under just that first step, right view.
It's quite humbling, isn't it? All that intellectual effort, all that study is essentially just the starting point of seeing correctly.
It reminds me of, the story of Sun Wukong, the Monkey King.
Yes.
He could leap thousands of miles, had immense power, thought he was invincible.
But he never actually left the Buddha's palm.
Exactly. So maybe our intellectual grasp, however big we think it is still just within that initial stage of right view, just beginning to see.
That's a great way to put it. It suggests right view isn't just about what you know, but fundamentally how you're oriented, how you're seeing reality itself.
And that perspective then shapes everything else, your thoughts, words, actions.
Precisely. Which brings us back to some points made later in the discussion, circling back to these core components. They revisited right action, Changyep.
Right. And the emphasis there was on its sheer scope.
It's huge. It's not just don't steal, don't lie. It includes all virtuous conduct, basic ethics, sure, but also the really advanced stuff, like the actions of a bodhisattva aiming to liberate everyone.
All of that is right action.
According to this teaching, yes. It's all encompassed within Changyep.
Wow. That really reframes things. You might think everyday kindness is one category, and these huge bodhisattva vows are something else entirely.
But here, they're presented as part of the same fundamental principle of acting rightly.
Okay, so how does that connect to, say, effort? The teaching talked about effort too, Tintan.
Yeah, right effort. And it drew a contrast with how we normally think about progress or achievement in the world.
How so?
Well, it suggested that even one single day lived according to right action, lived ethically, is more valuable than, say, 100 years of just indulging yourself.
Okay, that makes sense in a moral framework.
And even if you practice diligently for years and years developing virtue, that sustained work still falls under the category of right effort. It's the continuous striving.
So it's not like you graduate beyond right effort.
No, it's the ongoing practice. And similarly with right concentration, Chanin.
Meditation and focus.
Exactly. The teaching explained that even incredibly deep meditative states, the different levels of samadhi, the profound absorptions.
Even the attainments described for advanced bodhisattvas.
Yes, even those are considered aspects or results of practicing right concentration. It's a very broad understanding of mental cultivation.
Okay, this leads to a question I think many people might have. We always hear about wisdom being central to Buddhism. So why isn't there a right wisdom, Chan Tut, as like the 9th step?
That's a really important point. The teaching clarified that wisdom, or Tut, isn't seen as another step on the path in the same way.
It's not part of the path itself.
It's considered the fruit of the path, particularly the result of developing right concentration. When the mind becomes truly still and clear through Chanan, wisdom arises naturally.
I see. So wisdom is the outcome, the understanding that emerges, which leads towards nirvana, cessation of suffering.
Precisely. It's linked to the third noble truth, the cessation of suffering. The Eightfold Path is the fourth noble truth, the way to that cessation.
Got it. The lecture also mentioned a specific text, right? An encounter in the Majjhima Nikaya.
Yes, with an ascetic named Michaela Brahman. The Buddha speaks 4 famous verses there.
What do they say, basically?
They pack a lot in. Things like health being the greatest gain, contentment the greatest wealth. But crucially for our discussion, that nirvana is the highest bliss.
Higher than any worldly pleasure.
Right. And this is key, that the Eightfold Path is the only way, the unique path leading to peace, and what's often translated as immortality or the deathless state.
The only way. That's quite definitive.
It is. Which brings us to the word chan itself. Right. The teaching explained its roots.
Meaning straight, like a straight road.
Originally, yes.
Right.
And then evolving to mean correct, proper, fitting.
And the opposite is ta, wrong or deviated.
Exactly. Deviated from the straight path. The teaching noted that ta can sometimes carry a strong connotation today, implying something actively harmful or deceptive.
Which led to a warning, didn't it? About using that label ta too quickly for others.
Yes, a very important caution. The idea was that if someone holds a different understanding within Buddhism, as long as their core intention is towards liberation and they uphold basic ethics.
We shouldn't immediately jump to calling them wrong or ta.
Right. It might be better understood as their view being not yet fully right view. It acknowledges different stages of understanding on the path.
It's less judgmental.
Much less. It allows for growth and development.
The discussion then took an interesting turn, bringing in Kim Dung, the novelist.
Oh yes, the martial arts novelist, famous for exploring complex morality.
How does his perspective connect to chan and ta, right and wrong?
Well, Kim Dung often showed that labels can be misleading. True righteousness, chan, isn't guaranteed just because you belong to the supposedly good sect.
Right, like in Smiling Proud Wanderer or Heaven Sword and Dragon Saber, you see these righteous factions full of backstabbing and hypocrisy.
Exactly. And conversely, you find individuals within the so-called evil or ta groups who actually have great integrity, loyalty, and honor.
The lecture mentioned the founder of the Ming Dynasty, I think, coming from a group labeled evil.
That's right. History itself provides examples. So Kim Dung's insight, as applied here, is don't assume you're automatically right just because of your affiliation, and don't rush to condemn others labeled wrong.
It's the inner character that counts.
Precisely. Someone who looks righteous but has a corrupt heart is truly ta, truly wrong. But someone on a path considered ta, who genuinely works to correct their faults, can actually become righteous, John.
And that applies within Buddhist practice, too.
Absolutely. Even with access to the Buddha's teachings, the teaching warned, if a practitioner has a narrow, judgmental, or malicious mind, they're deviating from the true Chan path.
So being right, chan, consistently in thought, word, and deed is actually quite difficult.
Extremely difficult, especially now the teaching suggested, with so much time passed since the Buddha and so many different interpretations floating around.
It mentioned a contrast between then and now.
Yeah, the idea that the Buddha's direct, concise teachings often led his immediate disciples to quick realization. Whereas today, well, we often need lengthy explanations just to grasp the basics.
There's more room for confusion or distortion, perhaps.
That seems to be the implication, which makes having some foundational practices even more important to stay oriented towards right.
Okay, so what were those foundational practices mentioned?
3 key things stood out. First, respecting the Holy Tonkin Bhaktan. Fundamentally, this means deep reverence for the Buddha.
Seeing the Buddha as the ultimate standard.
Yes, as the unwavering benchmark. Without that reverence, it's easy to get lost.
Makes sense. What second?
Cultivating loving kindness and compassion, tam to be. And crucially, this needs to be for all beings.
Not just the people we like.
Exactly. Even those who harm us or we find difficult.
Yeah.
That universal compassion is presented as a core quality of a true disciple on the right path.
And the third?
Humility. Kim Ha. The teaching was very clear. Arrogance is a major detour onto wrong paths.
And humility involves?
A key sign of humility mentioned was taking responsibility for your own mistakes, your own faults, rather than blaming others or circumstances.
Okay, so reverence for the Buddha, universal compassion, and humility. Anything else highlighted for staying right?
Yes, avoiding ambition, Tamvan. Especially the ambition for quick spiritual results or recognition through means that aren't, well, entirely ethical or skillful. that desire can really pull you off course.
Like wanting enlightenment now.
Or wanting to be seen as a great teacher before you're ready. The lecture recalled stories of the Buddha encountering monks who were practicing intensely.
But maybe not correctly.
Exactly. The emphasis wasn't just on effort, but on the correctness of the effort, the alignment with the path. Speed wasn't the main goal, correctness was.
And one more point, restraint?
Yes, practicing restraint kimcho luk. Basically, not getting swept away by excessive indulgence and sensory pleasures. Keeping things in balance helps maintain clarity and stay on the path.
So these practices, reverence, compassion, humility, avoiding misplaced ambition, correct effort, restraint, they form a kind of bedrock.
A very strong ethical and mental foundation, yes, for navigating everything else.
Including navigating differences and understanding with other people. How did the teaching suggest we handle that when someone has a completely different take on things?
The first step, again, comes back to humility. Before judging the other person's view, the advice was to first seriously consider, could my understanding be the one that's incomplete or incorrect?
Turn the spotlight inward first.
Right. Resist that immediate reaction to criticize or dismiss. Ask yourself if you might be missing something.
And even if you think your view has merit.
Acknowledge that it still might not be the complete picture. Perhaps the other person has a different angle, maybe even a deeper insight you haven't reached yet.
The teaching laid out possibilities, didn't it? Like 4 scenarios.
Yes, a useful way to think about it. When views differ, 1, maybe you're right and they're wrong. 2, maybe you're right, but they're more right, deeper. 3, maybe you're wrong and they're right. 4, or maybe you're both wrong to different degrees.
That covers all the bases, really. It forces a more nuanced look.
It does. The main thrust is approach differences with a learning mind. Prioritize checking your own view before jumping on theirs. It mentioned that inner struggle,
What struggle?
that tension between holding on to your own cherished view and being genuinely willing to entertain the possibility that you might be wrong.
Yeah, that's uncomfortable.
Very. But the teaching encouraged leaning into that discomfort, being more willing to consider your own potential error. That's where growth happens.
And it circles back again to those 3 core attitudes.
Exactly. Reverence for the Buddha as the ultimate guide, universal compassion, and genuine humility. If you operate from that base.
You're better equipped to discern right from wrong in a constructive way.
And you're more open to learning from others, even when they see things differently. Because, as the teaching reminded us, nobody except a fully enlightened Buddha has the complete, perfect picture.
We're all works in progress.
Pretty much. So stay humble, stay open.
As a sort of final takeaway on discerning right and wrong paths, the teaching offered 3 broad criteria.
Yes. 3 benchmarks to evaluate any path, religious or ethical. Does it promote universal love and compassion?
Okay. Criterion 1, compassion.
Criterion 2, does it uphold fairness and justice consistently and unwavering?
Fairness.
And 3, does it aim for genuine, lasting happiness and ultimate liberation, like nirvana?
3, true liberation.
The idea being the path that scores highest on all 3. The most expansive compassion, the most consistent fairness, the clearest aim towards ultimate freedom from suffering. That's the path most likely aligned with truth.
That's a powerful framework for evaluation.
It is. And it suggests that really understanding what right means in the Eightfold Path is, well, it's a lifelong journey. We've really only scratched the surface here.
Absolutely. Definitely gives us a lot to think about. Thanks for breaking that down.
My pleasure. Until next time.
Looking forward to our next deep dive.